So what's the status of home construction across the United States of America? Some surprising statistics. I was quite surprised when we delved into the data. You think they'd be letting up on the gas, but no, they pressed that accelerator to the floor. Let's get into it. Surprisingly, home building is up across the board right now, despite the on paper supply chain issues, the COVID-19 fears, and increase in the home building materials cost. They've gone through the roof. You know, the U.S. home builders are not letting up on the gas right now on home building. Home construction is up at a much faster pace than expected in November, you know, bringing an end to 2 months of contraction and 4 months of lower than expected growth. So before I get into the home building, I just want to touch on the house prices right now. Just get 30,000 real quick. So basically, after increasing by a modest 0.4% in October, new home sales saw a 12.4% increase in November to a seasonally adjusted rate of roughly 744,000. The U.S. Census Bureau and the Department of Housing and Urban Development said. So despite the jump, the pace of sales was below expectations because of the sharp downward revision. So analysts polled by the Wall Street Journal had forecast new home sales to occur at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 766,000 in November. So the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, the housing sector remains strong, robust. But off the highs seen last year, sales are 14% below last year's level. In my opinion, I talked to one of my investor friends in the Midwest, and he works in depressed markets, and works with a developer and is a developer. And he said in these areas, investors are buying up new and pre-owned homes that average working people, can't afford to outbid the investors. Some are outbidding by 30, 40, 100K on average, he told me. He told me he had a call from an investment company asking what was the availability of new homes at a development he has been working. And they had just gotten a loan approval for 300 homes in the area. So, they buy them, then lease them, and then drive up the value of every home in addition, along with raising the property taxes to, the affordable levels, the rates. So let's say Mr. and Mrs. Shuffle Bottom, then what, when, they can no longer, afford to make the payments, because of increased property taxes and insurance, Mr. and Mrs. Shuffle Bottom are foreclosed on. And then here comes an investor who buys the home under value from the bank and leases it out. That's one builder in that area, he told me, sold every home to an investor, over 200. So there's really no such thing as affordable housing anymore for middle and lower class. For example, in the area of 400K, will get you a new home no bigger than the one my parents bought for 30K back in the late 70s that I lived in. So my dad bought his house from his parents, still lives in it. Smart man with his money. And every day some investor contacts me, and my friend was saying he gets contacted, and a lot of these people, they can't sell. Where are they going to go? So older homes in decent neighborhoods sell in 2 days, he was telling me. In these Midwest areas, sales are pending before you notice that there was a listing. Homes sell for amazingly prices, partly because of 30-year mortgage rates, maybe partly because he was saying he's noticing a lot of people from California and West Coast are buying. They're taking their proceeds and they don't want to pay capital gains, so they're rolling their money in, and partly because he also said if Hispanic multi-wage earner household families are buying. Some investors, ethnic Indians and Vietnamese, buy older homes and let them sit empty, banking on increasing home values by 33, 34% and higher, he was telling me. He said Asians and Hispanics are buying homes in areas of declining black populations, while blacks are moving to government-built townhouses or into whiter neighborhoods and school districts. He was noticing in the areas that he works. So few people of any color invest in abandoned houses in black neighborhoods. He was telling me. He said the two biggest slumlords in black neighborhoods are ethnic Indian doctors in these areas that own a lot of the homes in those areas. So he also said the great influx of Hispanics are pushing out in these areas the white working class into different neighborhoods. So there's a lot of movement, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. Construction started on new homes at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 1,679 million in November, a nearly 12% gain from October. So that was data from the Commerce Department. So this was by far biggest acceleration of home building than economists had expected. It was quite surprising. Surprised me. The consensus was for housing starts to come in at about 1.563, which would have been about 2.8% gain. The previous month was revised up to 1.563 million. So builders broke ground on single-family houses at a rate of 1,173,000, 11.3% above the revised October figure of 1,054,000. So compared with a year ago, starts are down 0.8%. Housing starts have been sluggish, surprising economists to the downside since August. Housing starts actually fell on a month-by-month basis in August and September, defying predictions that a shortage of homes for sales and skyrocketing prices would drive up the construction cost. So the sluggishness was, largely blamed on, the issue of the labor and the higher cost of building materials. Lumber costs have been, very volatile this year. Right now, spiking this spring, crashing this summer, and then rising again in recent months. Builders, appeared to be holding back on projects, hoping prices would come down. So even though there's been an uptick, so November may have been a tipping point when builders realized the prices would continue to rise and waiting would only make construction more costly. So they put their foot on the gas. Materials and components for construction rose roughly 1.6% compared with the October data from the Labor Department's Producer Price Index showed this past week. So, compared with a year ago, prices are up 21%. It's a lot. Services costs for construction were up roughly 14%. Last month, the pace of permitting for new housing units began to pick up, and it increased again in November. So permitting for new homes occurred at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of about 1.71 million, up by around 4% from October and 1% from a year ago. So, compared with last year, housing starts were up in the Midwest, not surprising, and South, the largest market for new houses, and down in the West and the Northeast, the smallest markets. So on a monthly basis, starts exploded higher in the small Northeast market, rose in the South and the West, and declined in the Midwest. So the total number of housing units under construction but not completed now stands at roughly 1,486,000. So the highest level seen since 1973. The number of single-family units under construction is roughly 752,000, which is the highest since May 2007. The number of units, authorized but not started is roughly 258, the highest since September 1974. More evidence that inflation had been holding back builders in recent months, which is an issue. But the bottom line is, the builders they're waiting it out a little while, and then they realized costs are just going to keep going. So they took a calculated risk and started building a little more homes and hoping the inflation in building costs and supply chain issues with, for example, all the ships off Southern California coast comes to an end. There's a lot of politics and people are playing games here with regards to supply chain issues, in my opinion. It's messing with people's livelihoods when you look at the big picture. So we'll have to keep an eye on it, but building costs, yes, they're up, but builders are continuing to build. They're going to roll the dice. We'll have to see how this plays out. Investors are buying blocks of homes all throughout the countries. They are driving up prices for first-time buyers and people that aren't investors trying to get into the housing market. A lot of people, like I've always said, are moving money from the market to the housing market and putting money in hard assets because the ROI seems to be very good. All right, take care. Housing construction update. Be kind. Be safe. Be nice.